Guys, in this episode, we will be playing Elwin and Shaera Scenario 5, the final scenario, together. Let's get started.
I regret being so quiet as we sailed across Lake Sleet. But I was angry at my beloved for hiding me away while he went to face Lord Hark. After all we had been through, why did he have to leave my side again? But Elwin was the Elf King now, and Aranar needed him more than ever before.
I stood on the bow, staring out over the still water of Lake Sleet. My thin cloak did little to keep out the icy, wet wind that gave these waters their name. Still, I barely noticed the chill because I was deep in thought about how different I had become since I met Shaera. I had seen more battles than I cared to admit and experienced more anguish than I thought I could stand. I had gone from an insignificant courtier to a criminal to leader, and it still wasn't over. On my head was an oak crown accented with gold gild and emeralds. It had been given to me a week ago by the Elder Council in an announcement that stunned me to the core of my being. The Elder Council asked me to be the new Elf King, as Mina that had said. Admittedly, we were about to give Lord Hark the crown, but then his sudden marriage to Shaera seemed suspicious. Meanwhile, Elwin, you have shown an appreciation of love, nature, and honesty. You have also shown that you are resourceful enough to do what must be done in the name of justice. That is just the sort of person Aranorn needs as its ruler. Out of respect for Minathat and Aranorn, I accepted even though I felt I was the wrong choice. After that, the elder druids presented me with my crown and the legendary bow of the Elf King. The ceremony was brief, and the celebration even shorter, for Aranorn had already been at war with Lord Hark for nearly 3 months. As the Elf King, I was expected to turn things around. After I captured Hark Manor and brought Shaera back to Aranorn, the Elven Court declared Hark a criminal. But no one realized how loyal the Forest Guard had been to their former commander. Most of them left their posts, not believing the accusations made against the man that once led them. Suddenly, Hark had an army larger than Aranorn's. In just 3 short months, Hark conquered most of Aranorn, and every time we send a force against him, we lose. The Elven Court is desperate now. Everyone knows we have only one more chance, and now that I am the Elf King, I am expected to raise a force against Hark that will put an end to this civil war. Yes, I was a different man now. In the past, I would have shirked from this responsibility. I might have even fled into the forest, never to be seen again. But I couldn't do that anymore. I was the last hope against the greatest threat to Elvenkind since the Reckoning. But first, I had to make sure Shaera was safe. It's hard to believe it was only yesterday that I took Shira's arm and walked from the deck of the ship onto the narrow dock. This nameless island in the middle of Lake Sleet had perhaps 100 inhabitants, mostly reclusive fishermen. With Hark so close to Aranorn, the Elven Court decided it would be prudent to hide the Elder Council here, so I brought Shaera along as well. I paused briefly as Minathat and the other members of the Elder Council stepped up onto deck and stared around at the island. Their expressions were somber, as if they had already been defeated. Leaving Shaera on the shore, I returned to the ship and helped Minathat onto the dock. We both glanced at the woman I loved. "You will watch her, won't you?" I asked him. "Of course, my boy. I'll even ask her to stay with me. If she refuses, I'll pretend I am too frail to even make my own tea. That should convince her," Minathat said. I smiled, hugging the old man like the grandfather I never knew. "Thank you," I said. "I must go say my goodbyes now." Shaera and I walked along the rugged beach until it became too treacherous, and then we sat on a rock to watch the water lap gently against the shore. The wind was blowing harshly from the lake, but we didn't care. "I'll return for you, Shaera," I said. She had barely said a word during our entire trip to this island, and now she looked like she was about to cry. "How do you know that, Elwin? What do you mean?" "Hark has already defeated Aranorn in 5 major battles. He has outwitted some of our best generals, including my own father, and now you go to face him. We have gone through so much. I am beginning to think we will never be together." and then Shaera did cry, pressing her head to my shoulder. I embraced her closely as tears rolled down my cheeks as well. Shaera, too, had changed. When Hark placed the enchantment on her, he stole her innocence. As often as I told her there was nothing to forgive, Shaera couldn't seem to shake the guilt of marrying Hark and sharing his bed for those months when we were apart. I only wanted her to be happy, but she refused to be. Perhaps when this was all over and Hark's threat was gone, perhaps then Shaera would finally forgive herself. I hoped. Reaching beneath my cloak, I pulled out the mirror of true love with my image still burned into its surface. I placed it in her hands so we could both look at it. Our love is forever, I said, just like the reflection in this mirror. No matter what happens, I will love you. What if Hark kills you? I lived with him. I know the hatred he has for you, Elwin. Then I remembered how a signal had been arranged to warn the Elder Council in the event that Hark had defeated the last remnant of Aranorn's forces. Listen, Shaera. Keep your eyes on the lake and watch for a ship. If I am victorious, or if I have lost and escaped Hark's wrath, I will come for you on a ship with blue sails. But if Aranorn is lost and I have died in battle, the messenger will come in a ship with red sails. I promise you, the sails will be blue. After a moment of silence, Shaera softly said, "If Hark wins, he will come for me. I do not think I can be with him again." I knew the secret meaning behind her words, but I didn't want to think about that right now. I didn't want to think about any harm coming to Shaera, so I pulled her to me and gave her a long kiss. "I love you," she said. This morning, I met with Grammon for the first time since I became the Elf King. He had been in the wild leading skirmish units responsible for harassing the enemy armies. Grammon still fought in this war, even though he lost his army to Hark a little more than a month ago. Grammon immediately dropped to one knee, as was customary, and set his longbow on the ground. Then he drew his sword and offered me the hilt. "I was wrong about you, my king. You are not the man I thought you were," Grammon said. "In some ways, Grammon, you were right, but I can't fault you for loving your daughter," I said. "I was wrong about Lord Hark as well. Very wrong." These last words were spoken with such bitterness that it startled me. Grammon was a man who protected his feelings, but now he was expressing an open hatred for the man who had once been his commander. Was this how I sounded when I mentioned Hark's name? I have felt a rage for my enemy boiling within. Me, for so long, I found it hard to remember a time when I didn't feel this way. "I need your experience, Grammon," I said, reaching out and taking the offered sword. "If we are to protect Aranorn and Shaera." "You have it," he said immediately. "Then take your blade back. You're going to need it." Being called the Elf King takes a little getting used to, but other than that, my life hasn't changed much. Unlike human nations, we elves don't place our kings on a pedestal so high that they become like gods. In fact, as Elf King, I am really the protector of the people, their servant. Although elves recognize the need for a single mind to give a nation direction, we also believe that everyone in that nation should have an opportunity to give their say. Thus, the elven court was formed, and there is no chance that my crown will go to my head, if you'll excuse the pun, as long as Shaera's falcon, Breeze, is at my side. This morning, as I gave orders to the unit commanders, Breeze did what birds do all over my shoulder. I suspect she chose that moment for maximum humiliation. Today we camped in an abandoned and burned village long enough to determine that whoever lived there was either dead or had fled the area long ago. I have stood among this type of scene so many times now that I wonder if Aranorn will ever recover, even if I do win. Not that there's much chance of that. Over the past several weeks, I have studied survivor reports of Hark's latest victories, hoping to find a flaw. I can't. In every battle, he has taken perfect advantage of his enemy's greatest weakness, and on 2 separate occasions has turned an apparent defeat into a miraculous victory. Hark has earned his reputation as a great military commander, and it's too bad that he has turned that talent against Aranorn. He would have been a great asset to our people. He might even have made a great king. As much as I respect Gramin, he has already lost to Hark once. In that battle, Hark took advantage of Gramin's rigid military mind, predicting Gramin's every move and handing him a sound defeat. As for myself, I am no strategist, and the way I organize my troops is amateurish at best. These are my obvious faults. Would they be enough for Hark to take advantage of? Or was there something I hadn't thought about? That's what kept me up at night. How was Hark going to defeat me? It's been 2 months since I've seen or heard from Shaera. When I left, I told her not to write me any letters. Our one advantage was that Hark didn't know where she and the Elder Council were hiding, and I didn't want to take the risk that he might intercept a message. So, at night, I sit alone in my tent wishing I had a mirror of true love with Shaera's image burned into it. Anything to remind me of her. It was over. I stood alone in a glen trampled by the passage of many troops and bent to straighten a wildflower that was fighting for life. As I stood, I adjusted the uncomfortable weight of the sword belted at my hip. I would be glad when I could rid myself of the weapon. Then a pair of elf warriors dragged Hark into the glen, followed by several dozen white tigers, my greatest allies during all this chaos. Hark had no hope of escape. I wanted him to know that it all ended here in this place. After the guards pushed Hark to his knees, we stared at each other for what seemed an eternity. His eyes were dark, narrow with hatred and rage. Shaera and I weren't the only ones who had changed. Hark looked nothing like the man I remembered, the one who led many of our people, including me, to safety during the reckoning. Slowly, I drew my sword. "So, you're not even going to give me a blade? Is that it?" Hark snapped. My fist tightened around the hilt of my weapon. Oh, how I wanted to thrust it into his heart. I pictured Shaera and Hark in bed together. I recalled all the times Shaera had burst into tears because she felt she had betrayed our love by marrying this man. It doesn't matter to her that she was under a spell. He took something from her. And I remembered all the lives that had been snuffed out by the war this man caused. No one would blame me for killing him. Some, like Grammin, would probably thank me. So why couldn't I do it? I dropped the sword, and in that instant, I saw Hark's knowing smirk. I jumped forward, clamped my hands around his throat, and placed my own face inches from his. "This is over," I said, emphasizing each word. "No matter what you do to me, you will always know that I had her first. Shaera is mine," Hark said. I squeezed the man's throat until his face turned red. I wanted to crush the life from him. "Shaera was never yours. Even when you were married, it was a lie. Every fond memory you have of Shaera is a lie. Her heart never belonged to you, Hark. You are nothing but a pitiful, hopeless lie, and you will never see Shaera again." I released him and he fell sideways, choking for air. I couldn't believe my own actions. I was actually going to let this man live. But when I looked down at Hark, I realized I was tired of the killing. One last time, I said, "This is over, Hark. Over." I ordered the guards to take Hark to his prison cell. Suddenly, I desperately needed to be with Shaera. Before the ship even came to a stop, I leaped to the dock and ran toward the shore. Minadat and the rest of the Elder Council were waiting for me. My heart skipped a beat when I noticed Shaera was nowhere in sight. "Elwin, my boy, you're alive," Minadat called to me. "Where is Shaera?" "Huh?" She ran from my house crying when she saw the red sails. "She said you were dead." I couldn't catch up to her, so the elders and I came down here to receive the tragic news. "When was that?" I asked urgently. "An hour or more ago." "Why? What's wrong, my boy?" Minadat asked, but I had no time to answer. Pushing myself past my former teacher, I jumped on a nearby horse and raced toward the cliffs. But inside I felt I was already too late. As I had feared, Shaera saw the red sails and assumed I was dead. Unable to face my death and the likelihood that she would become Hark's prisoner again, she went to throw herself from the nearest cliff. Tears began to flow down my cheeks as I realized an hour was more than enough time for her to reach the cliffs. Shaera was dead. I stopped when I came near the cliff and Shaera was not in sight. She was dead. I was certain of it. I should have known Hark would try to strike at me even from his prison. If I had stayed on deck, I would have known the crew was changing the sails. She was dead, and it was my fault. Then I came to a decision. I dismounted and walked slowly toward the cliff. A bitter wind blew over the ledge, causing my tear-soaked cheeks to sting. I didn't care. I wouldn't be cold for long. Soon, I would be with Shaera forever. Perhaps finally we would be happy. Then I heard the gentle, wordless chant. It was carried to me by the wind, and if not for a sudden shift, might not have ever reached me. The sad melody came from behind some rocks. I turned and followed it, daring to hope. She held her hands in front of her, clutching the mirror of true love to her bosom. Tears fell on the image of my face as she sang her sorrow to the sky, to the lake, to the world. "Shaera!" I shouted. She turned from the cliff and looked at me with eyes as wide as saucers. "But the sails," she said. "Never mind the sails. I have one." Shaera ran into my arms, clutching me tighter than ever before. We cried and laughed at the same time, and I felt like never letting go. And I won't ever let go. It was finally over, and we were together.
Many question the wisdom of Elwin's decision to let Hark live. What if he should escape? He could bring Aaron on to civil war again. There are still too many elves out there who bear a secret fondness for the man, no matter what Hark has done. I just hope they're wrong, and that Elwin never comes to regret this act of mercy.
Okay guys, so I have just finished the scenario. What a satisfying ending. Wow. And yeah, the scenario wasn't actually too hard. The enemies were really, I guess, easy to beat. So that ended up with me taking over almost all of the towns. And yeah, that final battle, I thought it was going to be super hard from what I have read online. But to be honest, it was very easy. Very easy final battle. But yeah, I still recommend you funnel your troops just in case, you know, just to seal the deal and win that battle. But yeah, as for the story, wow, what a story. Playing this game is literally like reading a novel. Okay, so let's do a quick summary of what happened. So basically, Elwin and Lord Hark go against each other and causes a civil war. And so, at the end, Elwin's army ended up beating Lord Hark's army, and Lord Hark has been placed in prison forever for his actions. What else? Okay, so at the end, somehow Lord Hark had one of his men, one of his followers, kind of sabotage Elwin into making Shaera think that Elwin was dead, which, you know, Shaera thinking Elwin is dead, you can probably guess what she might do. She will most likely jump off the cliff, and yeah, but at the end, it was a miracle. Shaera did not end up jumping off the cliff, and Elwin manages to get back together with Shaera, and they finally can live happily ever after. That's it for this playthrough, guys. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.